And so I think I spent a lot of time trying to kind of fit into what I thought people wanted me to be, because I wanted to do that in order for them to promote me. And the thing is, once I found out they're not going to promote you anyway, doggone it. Just be who you are.
Like millions of people around the world, we need to work. Some do it for the money, others do it for the recognition. And if you're lucky, you do it because you love it. But finding purpose and passion in your work can be easier said than done, and the path to success can be unpredictable at best. But if you're looking for some inspiration, then I've got one question for you. Are you consuming your career, or is it consuming you? Welcome to Consuming Careers. Have you ever had one of those jobs where you thought it was your calling, but it just turned out to be a soul-draining experience? Hi, I'm Bruce Smith, and in this week's episode, we're speaking with Chad Parsons, who shares his experience of growing up in a rather dysfunctional home and how he learned that the path to a more fulfilling career comes far less from external affirmation than from living an authentic life. So let's jump into my breakfast conversation with Chad. All right, well, welcome back to Consuming Careers, and I'm so excited. I've got my good friend, Chad Parsons, with me today. Chad, good morning.
Good morning.
It's Black Friday. Mm-hmm. Is that holds a special place in your heart?
Only in that it makes my wallet much lighter every year.
Well, it keeps you in business, being in the banking business, right?
That's true.
So what did y'all do for Thanksgiving? I'm sure you had a wonderful day.
Yeah. So all the kids were home. I have a daughter that lives in Chicago, and her husband's in medical school up there. I always like to give that little plug.
Yes.
Proud father-in-law, right?
Of a doctor.
And then our son, we have a son here in Georgia and a daughter here in Georgia. So it was wonderful
having them all together.
Having them all together. Family was there, and I am just particularly grateful for that.
Oh, man. We had a house full as well, and it was a sweet time all day.
Yeah, for sure.
So just for the audience, tell us, because I've known you for
a lot of years.
And I was doing...
At least 20, 25 years, something like that.
30.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. 30 when I met you at Norcross First Baptist Church before we had kids.
That's right.
And so it's been a long time.
Yeah, it has been a very long time.
So, and there's certainly a blessing to having longevity in relationships, right?
Yeah,
it's
for
such a sweet time. Well, tell the audience kind of who you are, what you do, kind of short and sweet.
Sure. I'm an area manager in treasury management for Fifth Third Bank in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, and that's where you live. But we're here in Atlanta.
Where we live.
Yeah, which is a story in itself, and we'll get there.
Still feels a little surreal.
Yeah,
that,
it
we
does.
live in Columbus, Ohio.
Because we're in Atlanta. So we're in Peachtree Corners. And tell me about the place you picked today for us to meet.
This is Manhattan's New York Deli, affectionately still called by us as Grouchy's, because we have come to this spot multiple times a week for 15 years, probably. This is our Cheers, right?
This place is great.
You probably noticed when we walked in, I know the people here. They know us.
Yep.
Two of our children worked here for years and years, so this is just kind of our spot.
Yeah, so this when you suggested this, I thought this is perfect. Right. This is going to be a great place to land.
Yeah, I'm comfortable here for sure.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Coffee's great. Great ambiance. We love just all the New York pictures. Looks like a lot of film pictures. Just a sweet family running it. Yeah, this is great. Well, let's back up a little bit. So tell me kind of where you grew up, some of the things that you were involved with growing up, where you went to school, kind of life, kind of what did that look like?
Sure. I grew up in Rocky Face, Georgia.
And where is that?
That is in the northwest corner of the state, about 15 miles from the Tennessee border.
Got it.
And we're a suburb of Dalton, Georgia, which most people have heard of Dalton before Rocky Face.
If you've got a carpet in your house.
Because it's the carpet capital of the world, and yes, I've worked in a carpet mill too. But yeah, that was home.
Oh, that's great. Funny side story. I was asked to write a jingle for Humongous Bill's Carpet in Dalton. And
That's good.
and I had
Humongous
to remember the jingle. The jingle was bigger than big, straight from the mills, a world of carpet, humongous bills. Isn't that good? That's good. And I had it to music and everything. So I had a buddy of mine who was doing radio, and he said, "Hey, I need a jingle.
That's fun.
What can you do with humongous bills?"
There's so much you could do with humongous bills. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I had a long list of things that I had to scratch out.
No doubt.
All right, so grew up in Dalton.
Yeah.
And then school, kind of what?
Yeah. So went to started out at Georgia. Was not focused whatsoever, and then the summer after my freshman year at Georgia, I met Amy Hollifield.
Okay.
At summer camp.
All right.
In South Georgia, and we ended up together being counselors at another camp the rest of the summer. And by the next March, we were married. So by the time I had known her a year, we'd already been married 4 months.
And how old were you?
I had just turned 20 when we got married.
Okay.
And she had just turned 19. So
All right.
she was a year behind, so she was just starting school. And when I mentioned the carpet mill, I worked third shift in a carpet mill the quarter before we got married, just to try to save a little money.
Yeah.
Right?
11 to 7, right? 11 to 7.
11 to 7, worst job ever. Cleaning out a dryer for a carpet mill is a terrible, terrible job.
Well, now you know.
Yes, now you know. And we ended up finishing at Kennesaw State University.
State.
Yes, both of us graduated on the same day.
Yeah.
Worked our way through school. I worked a full-time job and went to school at night.
Yep.
And we made it through.
Now, I thought you were also at Asbury.
We did. Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, ever since, I think probably it started when I was 16, 17.
Yep.
I had really felt a call to preach, to be a pastor. And so we went to Asbury for a year and ended up coming home from that. My mom had been diagnosed with MS. And so I just felt like we needed to be back in Georgia and finish school. So we ended up coming home from that. But I mean, that was something that calling, that feeling of, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm wired to do. Never really left, I guess, in a lot of ways.
But it maybe wasn't enough or the right timing, because you didn't really go in that direction yet, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I went back. I started working for Wachovia Bank, which, of course, is no more. That's Wells Fargo now. But started working for Wachovia while I was in school. That was one of the jobs that I took on, and they offered me a job. What was funny is after we graduated, Amy and I went to India for a mission trip for about a month, maybe it was 6 weeks. And the night before we were leaving, Wachovia called and offered me a job.
Wow.
And so when I came back, I started in banking and have been there for the most part ever since.
Okay. So, and at home, mom's sick. Where's Dad in this?
Oh, well, Dad's, my dad. And what's helped me realize this more and more is at Fifth Third, we had a leaders retreat, and my manager now had everybody kind of tell their story.
Okay.
And so I kind of went later in the group, and two other people had the same comments around dads who were in Vietnam and the PTSD of that, which of course nobody knew that then, but the PTSD of that and how it impacted their lives.
Okay.
So I say that to say, Dad had just some issues that made it as such that, even if he was there physically, he just wasn't there, and there was just no relationship really there. And they eventually did divorce, but it was a really, really weird and dysfunctional childhood in that. He's a hoarder too, so literally maybe 40% of the house was really unlivable.
Really?
It was just full. I mean, it was just full of stuff. At some point, my dad decided he was going to reconstruct the bathroom.
Okay.
And he started it, but never finished it. So my entire growing up, I never took a shower. It was always a bath, because all that was in the bath was a pipe coming out of the wall. So yes, the water was there.
Yeah.
But I never took a shower. And so Amy thought it was the funniest thing that I never took showers. I always wanted to take a bath. And I'm like, because that's all I've ever done.
That's all you've ever known.
It was always a bath, because there's no shower in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that, so it sounds like, and as long as we've known you, I've never known anything about your dad. Either you don't talk about it, or I didn't ask.
Yeah, I don't. I have, well, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at that. So I didn't talk to him for about 8 years.
Wow. Okay.
And reconnected with him, and that was even worse. It was just not good.
But it sounds like your mom really stepped in the gap.
Oh wow, man. Yeah, mom was incredible.
Yeah.
She instilled that I believe in you. You know, you're smart and capable, and even this was so indicative of my mom. I know you've heard this, but so before we moved to Ohio, and this was one of the last things that she said to me. She passed away on September 22nd, and one of the last things that she said I had shown her, because this was just so how we kind of did life, right?
Yeah.
Anything I did. Like anything, I would show mom and tell mom, because I knew she would say, "Oh my gosh, that is incredible." And I have a text saved on my phone that says, when I showed her the security cameras that I had installed, and the Google Nest thermostats.
Yeah.
She literally said to me, "You are the smartest man in the world. You can do anything."
And no one's going to tell you otherwise.
Well, and that's probably one of the complicating factors of my career, and that I found out not everybody thinks I'm the smartest man in the world, and they don't think I can do anything. So that was a bit of a rude awakening. But
apparently they're not paying attention. So we'll leave that alone. Well, that's really amazing. So I'm sure she had a pretty tough road to hoe.
Yeah, she did. Because Dad he had a drinking problem as well.
Yeah.
And he was never violent toward me.
Right.
As far as I know, he was never violent toward Mom. It's just...
So when you take that into consideration, when you think about all that, did those experiences ever kind of show up in the way you related to people at work, or in the way you worked, as a way of, I don't know, there's a lot of ways you can relate to that, right? You could say, I'm going to do this in spite of those situations, and as a reaction to.
Yeah.
Did you ever find yourself, like, either in a conversation or at work, and reacting in a way like, wow, maybe that's not all me, that's something that I'm reacting to?
Sure. I think one of the ways that I did was a drive for success, because he was always in debt, a lot of debt, and it was just messy.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a real drive for career success. I think there was a drive to not live life in small town Northwest Georgia.
Sure.
I think looking at this now, and it's funny, all this has just become much more clear to me ever since Mom passed away and we moved to Ohio, is that I think in some respect I've been running from that a lot of my career, and one thing too that I think as it related to him, so he worked for the same company for 30 years and lost his job. They let him go. And that happening very early in my career, I determined I was never going to be one of those guys who was loyal to a fault to a company.
Yeah.
Because you can pour everything in, and at the end of the day, and I don't mean that in some, companies are bad kind of thing.
Right.
It's just the bottom line is a company's going to do the right thing for the company, and C-suite's going to make C-suite decisions that are about the company.
That's right.
And that may mean you lose your job.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the case, then, and it's not about chasing money, because, and we can talk about, I made a career decision one time that I took an almost 30% pay cut to get out of that kind of lifestyle. Yeah. And so, I think for me, I want to pour everything I have into whatever role I'm doing at the time, and love the company and do the right things, but I won't, just blindly follow in the face of, a situation that's clearly, where I'm not having a sense of being appreciated for what I bring to the table.
Yeah, right.
That my managers are displaying, an appropriate amount of just respectfulness.
Sure.
I've sure been in roles where you didn't feel that. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I want to say thank you for sharing that, because I'll bet there's a lot of people that listen to this and say, I can see that in my life, right? Whether it's parents or siblings or some situation in their lives that have really affected them, and they're still kind of processing, right? And I think that's that's a lifetime journey.
Well, it sure is. I mean, I'm 53, so it's been a long time coming.
Okay, so I want to get to there's something you said about pouring your life into a career, right? And I've always been interested in the idea of authenticity in the workplace.
Right.
And I want your reaction to this. So, Seth Godin, if you know Seth, who's he's a well-known kind of marketing expert. Okay. And he would say that customers don't want your authentic self. They want a professional, right? They don't need to hear about your family. They don't need to hear about your personal views. They need a professional to show up and do work. What do you think about that? And I'm preface this because you live out in the open, Chad Parsons.
Right.
So you are authentic everywhere you go, which is what I love about you.
Thank you.
And it's truly inspiring in ways that you probably don't know about.
Thank you.
But so I want to ask in that, in that context, tell me what you think about that.
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive in an absolute sense.
Okay.
So there's always a line, right, in terms of
maybe
being well.
For you,
for me, I think there is. I mean, I want, for instance, from a leadership perspective, I would say, if I. And I don't mean if I have 100 direct reports, but if I've got 5 or 10 direct reports, as a leader, I ought to know their kids' names. I ought to know their spouses' names. So I want to know a little bit personally about them. From a professional standpoint, I think maintaining a professionalism, certainly in a sales scenario, is vitally important. Now, I don't need to tell them that my wife and I had a fight this morning. Right. But to tell them, my son is, he works for Inspire Brands, whatever. Just talk a little bit that kind of helps connect. Because for me, and I think it's really my entire, I don't know, my style, who I am is about connecting, right? So even in a sales standpoint, I'm looking to connect with you. Right. Like I don't do business at arm's length. I don't do life at arm's length. It just isn't me.
Yeah, that's right.
So trying not to do that just wouldn't work for me.
Well, there's a whole move to bring your whole authentic self to work.
Right.
Yeah. And
I'm laughing because I think, there's a point, y'all. Come on.
I know.
Yes, be authentic. Yes, I know. But
but all of it?
But everybody, I know. Everybody doesn't need to know what I think about everything. Right. And so I think there's a point. It's like that. So we think about Facebook. Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a point at which, yes, we want to be our authentic selves on Facebook, but honestly, nobody wants to hear if you're having a bad day.
Right.
I mean, just really. I'm not saying, now let me just say this. If you're having a bad day, I'd love to encourage you. But there's just that point at which once we get outside, once we're in the workplace, whatever, I just think there's a point. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Oh, no. I mean,
but it like, I don't know how, because I guess I've seen it be successful where if you're just authentic with somebody, and I think it comes down, because you said the word authenticity, right? Your authentic self.
That's right.
Well, the point is being your authentic self and not trying to be somebody else. And I spent years in my career trying to be something I wasn't, and that doesn't work.
Right.
At all. So I think if we're just being genuine, like if you're somebody that you really don't care about this person or how they're doing, all you're interested in is making the sale and doing whatever, then please don't try to be authentic. Don't try to say or convey that I care about you.
You're right.
But if that's you, then do that. I'm just, I don't know.
Good. All right, we'll get back to that.
Okay.
I just love that whole line. Okay, so in banking, I don't know how many years, 10 or 15 years, but the call was still there for ministry.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that transition. What kind of happened that either made it more available, the timing was right? What was that? Like, what made that turn?
We had been at a church for 12 years.
Yep.
And
here in Atlanta?
Here in Atlanta. Okay. And in that time, I taught Sunday school for years, had, just really gotten connected with people in the church. And that kind of call had not completely gone away. Yep. And they offered me a job to do sports and family ministry. And basically what that meant was I ran the kids basketball program, soccer programs, all that stuff, the softball league.
Did you have to go to seminary?
I started seminary.
Okay.
I started seminary in that. And then I would also do marital and premarital counseling. And I'll tell you right now, premarital counseling is a whole lot more fun than marital counseling. Good gracious. You've been married a while, you can have some issues, that's for sure.
Like the rails are already greased, right? Yeah, they're coming in hot.
Yes.
And you're just trying to slow them down.
Lord have mercy. Yeah. Good gracious. So that opportunity came about, and so we did it. And I loved being a pastor. Like, I loved the aspect of it that had to do with loving on people.
Yeah.
And love preaching, love teaching, all that. I mean, I loved it. It's just, it really is wonderful for me. So, but the bad part is, and this is what threw me, and it really threw me, is what it's like behind the curtain. Okay. And then, just things happened that I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in this kind of environment. And I'll never forget, I went to lunch with the music minister one day, whom I just loved and still do. Just a fabulous, kind, just beautiful man. And I said, all right. I said, now tell me, like, is this a unique situation? Because he knew, he saw all the same stuff.
And in different churches too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had been in a lot of, numerous other churches. And I said, please tell me this is a unique situation. Like, I'm thinking, we just got a bad egg here. The rest of the dozen's good. We're all right.
Yeah.
He's like, I wish I could.
Wow.
He said, I wish I could tell you that it was different. And as soon as he said that, I probably went back no more than a couple of days later and started making calls. Because I'd started in government banking and started making calls to try to get back into government.
So how long were you at that church?
A little less than a year.
Okay. All
You
right.
know, and so yeah.
Well, so it's interesting because you described a situation because of your dad, that you would never give your heart and soul to a company again.
Uh-huh.
And I think what happens and correct me if I'm wrong, in ministry is if you're coming from corporate where you've got your pads on, your helmet on, right, you're prepared for whatever they're going to throw at you.
Yeah.
But when you go into ministry, you take all those off.
Yeah.
And you are completely vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you're expecting to be safe.
Yeah.
Without pads.
Right.
And
it was
I
not
hope
good.
that's not the case everywhere, but I know it's it's more challenging than I probably think.
Yeah, for a long time, I just didn't trust anybody who was a pastor in any capacity at any church, right? But with age and a lot of years behind me since that took place, what I realized is one of the mistakes that I made was assuming that because you were a pastor or on staff at a church that you were somehow not as human as the rest of us.
Wow. Yeah.
And so the simple fact is you're still just as human, and you still, like, C.S. Lewis talks about, God doesn't save us to wipe our personalities clean, basically.
Right,
and
right.
So if you're just a cranky fella, then
Yeah.
you're still going to be human. And so I think I had some pretty unrealistic expectations. So I've got to own that part. I had some really naive
Yep.
and unrealistic views and expectations,
Mm-hmm.
and so that contributed to some of it.
Okay. All right.
Too, I think.
So so now you're making the turn, go back into banking.
Yeah.
This sounds like a place that you could find success. You could look at it and say, okay, I can land here safely. I can. It doesn't have to be safe, but I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
And I've been proven successful there. This would be a great way to kind of jump back in.
Yes.
Okay. So you did that.
Yeah.
And been doing that ever since.
Yes. And I'll tell you a quick story that is just so shows the incredible goodness of God.
Mm.
So I went to work at Wachovia again, and I'm thinking, I have completely failed God. I've failed these people who have loved me so well at church.
Mm-hmm.
I will never be as loved by God because I'm not doing this thing.
Right.
Because I couldn't see her. And it was so funny when I spoke at Mom's funeral, one of the pastors came up to me afterwards and said, you really do need to be preaching. Mm. And I laughed because I'm like, well, hadn't heard that before, right?
Tried it.
Yeah. And, because throughout the years, people, have said that, to me before. And
you are a great communicator.
well, thank you. I'm
Absolutely.
grateful. I'm grateful to be able to do that. But my first day at Wachovia, so let me back up just a little bit to say, the camp at which Amy and I met was run by a man named Mark Rutland.
Yep.
And Dr. Mark Rutland,
Yes.
Talk about a communicator.
Yes,
talk
sir.
about
Yeah.
wow. So Dr. Rutland ran this camp, and he wrote a book. His testimony is called Launch Out into the Deep.
Okay.
Launch Out into the Deep. So my first day at Wachovia, they show me my office. And in that office that had been left by the previous occupant was a copy of the book Launch Out into the Deep.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was so one of those moments where I just so clearly felt the love and goodness of God.
Yes.
And as if he were saying to me, I got you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay.
You're mine, right?
That
You're
is
mine.
awesome.
And it's okay. I'm here. I'm here. I didn't stay back there in ministry.
Right.
right? I'm here. You're mine.
Yeah.
You know,
as if he was going to set you up for failure because you left the ministry.
right?
Like,
exactly. And so I still keep that book with me in every office that I have had since. I keep it with me, just kind of remind me that God really does like me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So still in banking, but you made a shift last year or earlier this year.
Yeah.
And you moved from the arms of Atlanta, where all your friends are.
Yeah.
And me being one, my whole family being several.
Right. Yes.
To a call to Columbus, Ohio.
Yes.
Okay. Walk me through that.
Okay.
I don't know if a recruiter called you, and then the conversation with Amy, like,
Yep.
you know, here's an opportunity. How did you weigh that out, and how did you ultimately make that decision?
Yep. So I'll give a bit wider context for that because it will help this make more sense.
Okay.
I've been with the bank, not Wachovia, but I'd been with the bank about 13 years. And in that 13 years, I had won, the Sales Leadership Award for Treasury Management 4 out of a 5-year span.
Wow.
So it had gone really, really well. We'd exceeded goal every year. I had been very intentional about cultivating relationships at different levels of the bank. And so the executive director for my area retires. And so I'm thinking, oh my goodness, here's my shot. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be the new, I just know it.
Yeah.
And so I interview with the CEO. Things go well, I think. But unbeknownst to me, he had already kind of picked somebody from the outside.
Gotcha.
So he was a new CEO, wanted to bring somebody new from the outside, which I completely understand. Sure. Now, a lot of CEOs do that. I did not take it well. And so when the new executive director came on, that they had kind of, not cleaned house is the wrong word, but several executives had left.
Yep.
One CEO retires, new one comes in, several execs leave, and they go different places. Well, not long after that new executive director had started, one of those execs that had left called me and said, hey, I'm starting a group. I want you to come work for me. I'm like, hallelujah, I'm out of here.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to show y'all. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Not a good move, because structurally in that organization, there just wasn't a good spot for me.
Right.
I left. I wasn't really going to anything as much as I just wanted to leave where I was, right? So, case in point, don't just leave somewhere because you don't like where you are.
Note to the audience.
Yeah, please make sure you thoroughly understand structurally what is happening in the organization and exactly what you're going to do.
That's right.
And what you're walking into. So do that. And then that doesn't go well, of course.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a good spot because I allowed the rejection that I felt from that company to carry right on over. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to let rejection carry over. It becomes baggage that we carry along with us.
Yeah.
So I allowed that rejection to impact the way I did that job. I carried it right on into the next job.
Yeah.
In terms of looking for this validation from my managers too much.
Got it. Yeah.
Because, and I will say this, I think there was a part of me, I lost who I am or who I was. I lost that clarity back when I left the ministry. When I did that experiment,
right,
and left it shattered my faith.
Yeah.
Had not much of anything left, and it also shattered me. It just shattered me, right? And so I'm going through all of this stuff, just not really quite whole.
Yeah.
However, and here's the funny part, it's just the goodness and grace of God, the career is going well. Like, it's going well.
Yes.
I feel like a failure, right? Because I'm not advancing as high as I think I need to. Or as high as my capabilities should allow me to go.
Right.
Right? So I'm thinking failure, which just made it all kind of a big mess.
Yes. Yes.
So this other executive that had also left that previous bank, right?
Yep.
So then he calls and says, hey, we're starting a bank in Atlanta. Want you to come build treasury management for me, lead that group.
Yep.
I'm like, good gracious.
I'm in.
Let's
go.
I don't like where I am. So let's go. So I did that, and then it went wonderfully well. Wonderfully well. We grew faster than I could have imagined. The team was great. You know, people, so it was very gratifying and fulfilling in that people that they brought in from larger banks said, this is the best treasury team we've ever worked with.
That's great.
Man,
Yeah.
so I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
But because I kept blaming myself for making the wrong move, I always felt like I made the wrong move. I made the wrong decision. It was all about me making the wrong move. And that paralyzes you.
Wow.
When you're constantly wondering, did I make the right decision? And it just paralyzed me. And honestly, it sent me into a depression that I was in for years. Well, you're talking about the move to Ohio.
Yes.
It wasn't hard for me to move. Because I'd been isolated for years.
Okay. All right.
I'd isolated from church, so I didn't really have any relationships in church. While I had friends, I didn't want to do anything with anybody.
Wow.
I just withdrew inside, and so I'm like, what am I leaving? Right?
So and you're saying that's from just feeling like a failure, and that just kind of spilled over into all the other
all
areas.
of life.
Yeah.
Yep, all of life.
Yeah.
And I think too, you know, Amy and I had fallen into that. What I'm finding is an altogether common middle-aged marriage trap, where she kind of has her life and her friends and does her thing. Yep. And I kind of just want to sit on the couch and watch TV. Yep. And so we were kind of just those separate life tracks. Nothing's bad. No. You know, at all. I mean, it's not that anything's terrible. Right. But it's just there's not that intimate closeness that was there before when it was really just us. So that's one of the great benefits, and we can talk about this more later, but one of the great benefits of being in Ohio and it just being Amy and I is it's completely revolutionized our marriage. Wow. Completely revolutionized our marriage.
Didn't see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely been the most glorious thing in our relationship. I've been married to that woman for 33 years, and I tell you, I love her more now than the day I married her.
Because it's like you're back in boot camp, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
And you are, you know, in the trenches together.
Yes, and that's it.
That's
and
awesome.
Crying together and, you know, missing home together and all that kind of stuff.
So how'd you get to Ohio?
So a recruiter calls me from Fifth Third Bank, and he says, hey, saw your LinkedIn profile. Seems like, you know, you've got some good experience. Would you be willing to talk? Now, anybody who's been working a while has had plenty of conversations with recruiters.
That's right. That's right.
So I don't really think that much about it. And he said, you know, it's in Columbus, Ohio. Again, I didn't think that much about it because we've all talked to plenty of recruiters. It just doesn't work out. I mean, most of the time it doesn't work out. And so I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, we'll talk. So I talked to him. And I really liked him. Yeah, yeah. And Fifth Third is just so good in treasury management. I mean, a dream platform from a salesperson standpoint, you know. So I'm like, heck yeah, I'll listen. And so we hit it off. He said, you know, I'd like for you to speak to the regional president and the commercial team lead. And so I talked to them. Yep. And we got off the phone, and I was like, my gosh, they are fantastic. Yeah. Like, this is really something. So Amy and I went to Columbus to visit and for some in-person stuff on July 10th. And just loved it. One, I thought, my gosh, you can actually drive in Columbus, Ohio. Like, you can really move. Like, it's not so crowded that
That's
you can't
right. Yeah.
get on the highway, Amy said, Amy said, I love this. We're walking down downtown Columbus, Ohio, and she said, are they still on COVID restrictions? Because there's just not that, it's not, people just aren't everywhere.
Yeah.
The congestion, right?
Yeah.
There's no congestion.
That's
and
fantastic.
It's a lovely place and lovely people. And so, anyway, we came back and they offered me the job. And we had been talking, Amy and I had been talking about it a little bit. But then, of course, it got real.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, they've offered me this job, and I want to take it.
And then you start playing out all the scenarios like, okay, what are we going to do with the house? What are we going to tell our friends? What are we going to do with our, community? Like, all those things.
I'm laughing because Amy probably is playing those out. I'm not one that really plays out scenarios. Like, I'm only in the sense that I am very much all right. If this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And part of that comes from, I think, and this is something else, I've always worked with a sense of responsibility toward my children. Because the Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And so certainly some of that inheritance is a spiritual inheritance.
Yep.
However, I wanted to make sure I did that because, there's no inheritance from my dad. There's no inheritance, from anybody.
Right.
And so it was an opportunity to do better, right? To further my career, to do better for our family. And so I felt a real responsibility about that. And so I really didn't play all of that out. Now, she played it out enough for the both of us.
Okay. All right.
And so, we kind of kept talking and kept praying and really asking the Lord for wisdom. And I mean, if at any point she would have said, I don't believe this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I promise you we wouldn't have gone, because I knew the last thing in the world that I needed was to take my sweet wife to Columbus, Ohio, if she didn't want to be there, and if she didn't really believe God meant for us to be there.
Yeah.
Right?
Now there's a different side to this that I want to hear a little bit more about, and that is, from my understanding, you had extensive conversations with Fifth Third about doing this job on your terms, based on who you are.
Yeah.
And you weren't going to dress up for anybody.
Yes. Yes.
So I just want to hear a little bit about that.
Sure.
And because just knowing you, I've seen authentic Chad in many ways, which I just think is inspiring. And as conservative as I think you are, you're kind of out in the open most of the time, which is just awesome.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
But tell me a little bit about that and what you've learned about being authentic, doing things on your terms, and how it's worked and hasn't worked. It seems like it's worked this time. Has it always been that way?
No, and that's a great question because I really spent far too much time trying to fit into banking. I'm not the norm in banking is not somebody who's as enthusiastic, shall we say, as passionate as I am. And so I think I spent a lot of time trying to kind of fit into what I thought people wanted me to be, because I wanted to do that in order for them to promote me. And the thing is, once I found out they're not going to promote you anyway, doggone it. Just be who you are, right?
Right.
And it's like people would, in roles before, because I really am passionate and have a firm belief in the best way to lead a group of people that will make a difference in their lives and will make a difference in the company. And a lot of times people have kind of laughed at that. They're dismissive about it. They view it as unimportant. So with Fifth Third, I was very clear. I didn't even clean up my accent. Because living in Atlanta, I've tried to, not that it necessarily works, but I try not to let my accent be as if I were truly comfortable in, Rocky Face, Georgia, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even try to sound anything other than however it is I sound.
Because you stick out like a sore thumb in Columbus, Ohio. Because there is.
Do I ever?
I'm from Ohio. I mean, so there's no accent there, the way I see it.
There's not. You're exactly right. It's straight down the middle. And so I just decided, you know what? And part of it was I didn't want to make it happen.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be, look, if God is in this,
Yep.
then I want it to happen. But I don't want to, I don't want the fact that, and there are plenty of things I don't do well, but one of the things I do well is communicate and connect with people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't want my ability to do those things to get us somewhere we don't need to be.
Yeah.
And so
That's
I thought, all right, I'm just going to do whatever. I'm not even going to trim my beard. Literally, I was thinking, I'm not even going to trim my beard for these video interviews because, look, I don't want this to happen if this doesn't need to happen.
Right.
And so, yeah, I did a PowerPoint, and I just laid out how this is exactly who I am.
Yep.
This is exactly how I'm going to lead people. Here's what I'm going to talk about.
Yes.
Because I said to my manager, I'm like, I don't want you to be surprised at who you're getting.
Right.
I want you to know exactly who you're getting.
Yeah.
Again, because I do not want to move my sweet wife to Columbus, Ohio if we're not supposed to be there.
Yes. And you have to be somebody else when you get there.
Yes, I'm so tired of that.
Yeah.
I'm truly just done with that. And part of that comes from, so you talked about like with mom and dad and all that whole scenario. So single mom, I'm an only child. So I was the apple of her eye. Mm-hmm. And again, I came out of Dalton thinking that everybody thought I was great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that clearly can be taken too far.
Sure.
And can be really tough. And then you find out that's not necessarily the case. So learning that was a difficult process.
Yeah.
And I think it made it to where I just tried to perform for people's applause. Mm-hmm. I really did. I mean, looking at it now, I think I was just trying to get the approval that I had.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this need for people to think I'm awesome.
All right, I'm going to stop you there. So the alignment you're talking about with your personality, your skill set, your relational skills, there's a lot packed in that. If you were talking to your 20-year-old self, do you think that's truly available to have that kind of alignment even when you're young? Or is there a certain amount of, you just got to suck it up and just do what needs to be done to get a job or to do a job? Do you have that same, I would call it a luxury, because I don't know, and I'm still trying to figure this out, if everybody can do that all the time.
I get where you're coming from. My hope is that if somebody just starting out in their career could hear this,
yes,
I would say, don't hide who you are. Because here's the thing, and yes, I don't disagree with you at all. I get the fact that we have responsibilities.
Yes,
we've got to work, most of us, and we need a job. But here, the thing is, the longer you work to fit in, the harder it is to stop.
Yeah.
It's like you're digging a hole deeper and deeper, and you're fitting in to keep the career going or whatever. I would much rather say to somebody, hey, like, be the person that God made you to be.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're going to bring something unique that company needs, or if this company doesn't realize they need it, I promise you somebody will. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They will. Because I have finally found a spot in banking that for me just works because, like, of that freedom to just be myself. Yeah. And yes, I had to, I said, hey, this is me. I want to make sure, but I haven't shrunk from that. And that's the thing I spent so much of my career doing, was shrinking from who I really am because I was so desperate for everybody's applause.
Right.
that I tried to fit in so that the applause and promotions would come.
Right. And I think part of that also is people doing jobs for the wrong reason, right? It's the same thing as applause, right? It's like, I'm going to do it for the money. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to change myself a little bit so that I can get this job and make that money, or whatever that motivation might be. That's some great insight there. All right. We're going to start to land the plane here in a couple seconds.
Okay.
So let me ask you, this is kind of the key question. Boy, I've got a lot of questions that we never got to, but it's been a great discussion. So what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing right now, and how are you tackling them?
You asked a question earlier about kind of like what you're asking is the thought process around what it's really going to mean to move to Ohio.
Yes.
After living in Georgia all of my life, basically.
Right.
And leaving Amy's hometown.
Yes.
Of which she's lived all of her life.
Yeah.
So I think that adjustment, it's been easily one of the most difficult things that I've ever done.
Wow.
In being in a new place, being in a new job it's certainly much more demanding.
Yep.
Much larger bank than I have worked with for many years. So the job's more demanding, but being in Ohio when you're from Georgia all of your life, it was much more of a shock to the system than I anticipated it would be, because I didn't really think I was leaving anything necessarily. Because again, remember, I've been withdrawing for years. I've been pulling inside myself for years. Yep. So I'm thinking, well, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a big difference. Because what I found is that, wait, the people in Norcross and Peachtree Corners, like, they do care about me.
They do, yeah. And
so I've realized that, but it's just made it so much. It's been so difficult. You know, Amy's. I'm so proud of her for being willing to do this and loving me enough for us to go do this. But moving to a new city is a much more difficult thing than I would have ever imagined someone doing. So it's made me very sensitive to people coming in from somewhere.
Right.
I would want to do all that I could to help somebody who's moving in to a new place, because so many people have been so good to us in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, because work is hard enough.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a home that's restful,
you
know, it's just going to another, not another job, but it's another struggle, right? You know?
No kidding. I would actually have a pretty decent day at work, or pretty walk in the door, and as soon as I see Amy, she starts crying. Those like first 3 or 4 weeks, you know. Which she does not do now, right? She's adjusted so well, but yes, it's a really difficult thing. And I've told the people who run, it's called Columbus Partnership, or it's that part of Columbus that tries to draw businesses in to come to Columbus, you know. And I said, listen, y'all need to talk about how friendly people are here in Columbus, because if a company's moving here, they're moving employees, and if an employee is unhappy,
that's right,
because they've had to move to a new city, they're not going to be as productive. Please talk about how friendly people are in Columbus.
Yes.
Right. You asked me about my Ohio State hat, because the thing is, those people have just welcomed us in so beautifully.
Right.
They're just such kind, and you know, been really wonderful to us.
Oh, that's great, Chad. All right. This is kind of the key question.
Okay.
Would you say, and you can interpret this any way you want, would you say that you've consumed your career, or your career's consumed you?
I consumed it, and here's really why I'll say that. So I always tell, when I have lunch with young dads, or maybe even guys older in their career, I always say to them, invest your life in things that hug back. Invest your life in things that hug back.
I love that, yeah.
Because now, having adult children, I see the importance of investing early on, because it is such a joy to have our adult children back with us. It's fun. The friendship is fun. The coaching is fun. All that kind of stuff. But I was working for Visa at the time, And I was traveling so much. And remember, I'm a guy I literally have a pipe coming out for the bathtub. It's a pipe that's getting water out, and that's my bathtub. That's all I've got. Rooms you can't even walk around in because there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm working for Visa, and I'm making good money, and I'm traveling. I'm most of the time I'm either in San Francisco, Phoenix, Chicago, DC, or Charlotte.
Okay.
I'm in one of those cities most of the time.
Right.
During this job. Worked there 3 years. So after my middle child, Grace, was born, and I'm on the road all the time.
Right.
And one day I'm in San Francisco, and I'm looking over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I said that about the bathtub again just to say, again, remember where I'm coming from, and now here I am flying to these cities, these cool cities, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking up the Golden Gate Bridge, and I thought, not bad for a kid.
I've arrived.
Coming out of Rocky Face, Georgia. Not bad. And the next thought that hit me was, yeah, but you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And your family's back in Georgia. So again, I left there, started calling, looking for a job, took a 28% pay cut to get off the road, and would absolutely do it again in a heartbeat.
Wow.
Would absolutely do it again in a heartbeat. So I made that decision that my family was more important than making a lot of money and being gone all the time. So that's why I would say I think I've consumed it rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I think you made the right choice.
Thank you. Me too.
All right, let's get into the lightning round.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. 5 questions.
Okay.
So what are you reading now, or what are you listening to now?
I am reading Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller.
How's it going?
It's fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's really good to play.
All right, and then and I know you're a big music fan.
Yes.
Okay, so what is your favorite music medium? Vinyl, digital, cassette, or 8-track?
Vinyl, number one. However, I must have a caveat because high-resolution digital files are an acceptable and great-sounding medium. But high-res, not MP3s, but high-res that are at least 1644, which is CD quality. But higher than that, it's really good.
Perfect. All right. And if you could drive only one car for your entire life, what would it be?
A Genesis G60.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
In Atlanta? You do that in Atlanta or just in Columbus?
I will do it in Columbus for as long as God has us in Columbus, and then here for the remainder.
You just drive it a lot slower here.
Yes,
that's the problem.
That's for sure.
All right. If your life was a vinyl LP, which one would it be?
Exile on Main Street.
And who is that?
Rolling Stones.
Oh, man.
It's my favorite Stones record.
All right, last question. If there were no social or career-related consequences, what tattoo would you get and where would you put it?
I would get the Rolling Stones tongue on my chest.
That's perfect. I knew I'd get a good answer out of that one. All right, how can people find you if they want to either connect with you or hear from you or see what you're doing?
My email is parsons4656@outlook.com. That's PARSONS 4656@outlook.com.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, love to hear from you.
Oh, that's great. Chad, I can't tell you how much fun this has been to hang with you like this and just to get a little deeper with our friendship. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
bet.
much.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you for joining us on Consuming Careers. If you've enjoyed the show, please click the follow button in your podcast app so you won't miss any of our future episodes. And if you have a minute, write us a review. We truly appreciate hearing from our listeners. And as always, I'm Bruce Smith, and you've been listening to Consuming Careers.